Hey everyone, Dave here, and I'm at Disney World!
As many of my friends can tell you, I'm something of a theme park geek, as well as a movie, TV, adventure game, comedy, voice acting, Tolkien, Star Wars, Calvin and Hobbes, MST3K, Weird Al, Jonathan Colton, and Mexican food geek. But believe it or not, I've never been to Walt Disney World before this year. We never went to Florida growing up, we always visited family in California, so I've been to Disneyland many times, but never Disney World despite living on the East Coast my whole life. Sort of like how I've lived in the US my whole life, but only ever visited the Canadian side of Niagara Falls. But I spent some time living in Florida this year, and I had a seasonal pass.
So I'm about to see firsthand for the first time just what the differences between Disneyland and Disney World are, and I'm inviting you along on this journey. First key difference I can see right now is that at Disney World, sometimes water falls from the sky. And of course, as the famous song tells us, in Southern California, it never rains.
The best place to begin is the section of Walt Disney World that got most of its older brother's DNA, the Magic Kingdom. It's the most direct clone of Disneyland, but it's not quite identical. Several of the rides that would be in Tomorrowland are in other Orlando parks, and some Disneyland rides have no equivalent here at all. But at the start, the parks are very similar. Both parks are surrounded by old-fashioned railroads that serve as travel shortcuts between the lands, but Orlando's railroad is more of an attraction in and of itself, with more dioramas and sights along the way. After the entrance with the giant flowery Mickey face, you find yourself in Main Street, USA. Main Street isn't known for its rides, but it is known for featuring the key difference between a simple amusement park and a theme park: atmosphere. Anyone can put a fence around some roller coasters and a Ferris wheel, charge $50 and call it an amusement park, but a theme park transports you to another world. Walt Disney basically invented the theme park, and he wanted people to feel like they left their troubles far behind when they entered. This is easier to do when you're not carrying a shrieking toddler, but the point is Main Street is dripping with atmosphere, taking you to a slice of Americana that probably never really existed, but feels undeniably welcoming. Going down the street, you approach Cinderella's castle, and holy crap is it huge! Seriously, it's over twice as tall as Sleeping Beauty's castle at Disneyland. I guess Prince Philip is less worried about compensation than Prince Charming is. The castle is surrounded by the other sections of the Magic Kingdom. Let's begin with Adventureland. I'm going to be talking a lot about things that I think Disneyland does better, so let's start with something I prefer in Walt Disney World: the Swiss Family Robinson Treehouse. About 10 years ago, Disneyland replaced their copy of this attraction with the Tarzan Treehouse. It's basically the same thing either way, walking around looking at dioramas based on scenes from the movie, but I never really cared for the Tarzan version because Tarzan wasn't a big part of my childhood. Swiss Family Robinson was. It had ostrich racing and killing pirates with coconut bombs. What more could a kid want? So for the sake of pure nostalgia, I'm really happy Magic Kingdom kept the Robinson version. Moving on, we come to a ride that is either awesome or tedious depending on how much fun your cast member is having: the Jungle Cruise.
I will not sing Skipper Dan, I will not sing Skipper Dan, I will not sing Skipper Dan. You know what? I think I'm going to sing Skipper Dan. I'm a tour guide on the Jungle Cruise ride. Skipper Dan is the name.
And I'm doing 34 shows every day, and every time it's the same. Look at those hippos, they're wiggling their ears, just like they've done for the last 50 years. Now I'm laughing at my own jokes, but I'm crying inside, 'cause I'm working on the Jungle Cruise ride.
Adventureland has a few other attractions, such as the Aladdin carpets, which are basically a clone of the Dumbo ride, and a newer version of the Tiki Room taken over by Iago and Zazu. Because when you think of dynamic co-host duos, you think Gilbert Gottfried and Rowan Atkinson. But the most famous and popular attraction is only in Adventureland because Orlando doesn't have a New Orleans Square. Built in Disneyland in 1967 and Disney World in 1973, odds are, if you grew up with Disney parks, you grew up with Pirates of the Caribbean.
And of course, this ride inspired the franchise that gave us one of the funniest pirate characters of all time, Guy Rush Threepwood. Okay, I hate to interrupt this whole video for a rant, but this is the internet, so.
First off, yes, I enjoyed all three Pirates of the Caribbean movies. They were a bit overrated, but they had fun characters, some cool action, and the most delightfully convoluted plot lines outside of an Arrested Development episode. That said, elements from the movies don't belong in the ride. The movie was based on the ride. You don't go back and change the original to accommodate the spin-off. Who do you think you are, George Lucas? It's like going back to all subsequent printings of Lord of the Rings and replacing Glorfindel with Arwen. Well, it's not quite that sacrilegious, but it still annoys me. Okay, so this Davy Jones effect is actually pretty awesome, but the CGI feels unbelievably out of place among the 30 to 40-year-old animatronics. And I do love Jeffrey Rush's Barbossa in the movies, but Paul Frees's Wicked Wench Captain was a freaking icon, and it's just not the same without him. And the Jack Sparrows. Oh, the Jack Sparrows. Admittedly, Jack Sparrow coming out of this barrel is more kid-friendly than what was originally there, but these are pirates! Besides, the kids are hiding their eyes from the skeletons. They won't see the naked woman. But the worst offense is that almost every pirate in the ride is now talking about Jack Sparrow. Barbossa's looking for him, the guys dunking Carlos are looking for him, the pooped pirate's hiding the map from him. They gave the Pirates ride a direct storyline. That's just wrong. The entire fun of growing up riding Pirates of the Caribbean was the mystery of it all. You enter this mysterious faraway world that you don't know, and you get to use your imagination as you wonder who these pirates are and what their story is. And if I may return to Monkey Island for a second, Ron Gilbert has stated that half of the inspiration for the tone of the first game was wanting to get off the boat, explore the settings, and find out who the characters on this ride are. You don't get that same sense of wonder when they tell you that Jack is responsible for all this like a self-insert Mary Sue in a bad fanfic. Hell, half of the fun of the movies was seeing them reference so many scenes from the ride, weaving them into the story, like it was one interpretation of what was going on in the ride. That couldn't have even happened in the first place if the ride had just told us what was going on like this. Sadly, these updates have been made at both Anaheim and Orlando, so I'll just have to learn to accept them. But how do the East and West Coast versions compare to each other? Well, I'm complaining about a lot right now, so I'll start with one aspect I actually prefer in Orlando: the line area. In Disneyland, it zigzags you in front of a house, then you go inside and wait a little longer and get in a boat. Magic Kingdom at least takes you past cannons, cargo holds, and other stuff that feels like it belongs in a pirate story. Other than that, the Magic Kingdom version is, short. Seriously, it's something like half as long as its Disneyland forebear. There's no Blue Bayou restaurant, no calm yet haunting banjo strumming, which incidentally was another thing Monkey Island referenced, no talking skull, only one drop, fewer treasure rooms and skeletons, and no awesome gunfight in an explosives warehouse at the end. Granted, while the gunfight at the end of Disneyland's Pirates is cool, I did always think being pulled up the hill without another drop at the end was anticlimactic, and the Walt Disney World version has the famous jail scene at the very end, which is actually an interesting idea. And despite a touch of 80s sitcom style, ha ha, here we go again, with the goofy escape attempts, it shows the ultimate consequences of a life of piracy, which would leave the ride with a very poignant and somber impression, were it not immediately followed by a drunk singing Jack Sparrow. Yeah. So long story short, Pirates of the Caribbean at Walt Disney World is nowhere near as great as Pirates at Disneyland, and Pirates at Disneyland of today is nowhere near as great as Pirates at Disneyland of the past. But despite my complaints, I still love the ride. I may not like the new changes, but there's still plenty of goodness there, and they haven't completely destroyed the atmosphere yet. And as far as songs from Disney rides go, I don't really mind getting this one stuck in my head.
Yo-ho, a pirate's fight for me.
But my favorite ride in Adventureland has always been the Indiana Jones Adventure, Temple of the Forbidden Eye. Orlando doesn't have it. At all. It's like they asked me everything that I thought was perfect about Disneyland and decided to do the opposite. Is this park run by Disney or Fox? So, I guess we have no choice but to move on to Frontierland. The theme of Frontierland is, of course, the Old West. Once again, a sanitized version where saloons serve French fries, but a fun version nonetheless. Frontierland is the home of two of Disney's iconic mountains. We'll start with the one so popular it assures that Disney can never completely sweep Song of the South under the rug, Splash Mountain. It's hard to believe now, but this ride got its name because Michael Eisner, in his infinite wisdom, wanted it to be a promotional tie-in with the movie Splash. Yeah, I can't believe they didn't go with that idea. So, instead of going with the movie doomed to semi-obscurity, they decided to tie it in with the movie that the company always tries to force into obscurity, which backfires and turns into mysterious legend. Because the ride went so over budget, a lot of the animatronics were taken from a defunct attraction called America Sings. Yeah, I don't know anything about it. It was gone long before I ever went to the parks. Sadly, Splash Mountain was closed the first day I was getting footage at Magic Kingdom, so we came back another day.
We are now in hour 12 of waiting in line for Splash Mountain. Fortunately, not all of us have resorted to cannibalism yet. How are you keeping yourself entertained on the Splash Mountain line, sir?
Video games.
Ah, yes. Nathaniel, my friend, what are your thoughts on this experience? Oh, we're about to lose another one.
Both versions of Splash Mountain tell the same basic story, which is just one of the Uncle Remus stories with fewer racist overtones. There are a few differences between the coasts, but nothing I thought was worth mentioning because we all do this ride for the ending. And you know what the ending is. You go up the hill, you go down the hill, you get really wet, and I turn into Jack Nicholson. Okay. The other notable mountain is Big Thunder Mountain Railroad, the self-proclaimed wildest ride in the wilderness. I have no idea why I love this ride as much as I do. It's not really much of a roller coaster, and it's not really much of a theme ride. There's very little story, although you can pick up hints about a mining town, an ancient curse, and a runaway train. And it's not particularly scary, although there are some pretty sharp turns. But for some reason, I've just always loved this ride, and I try to ride it every time I visit Disneyland or Magic Kingdom. The next section of the park is Liberty Square, which I guess is the equivalent of Disneyland's New Orleans Square, except with the colonial theme. It's the home of the Hall of Presidents, and more importantly, the Haunted Mansion. Let me get this out of the way. I like the exterior of the Disneyland Haunted Mansion better. It just strikes me as more ominous and more of what I picture when I think of a haunted house. But the ride itself is basically the same with just a few minor differences, and it's just as awesome. The effects don't turn up well on my crappy camcorder, but in person they really hold up quite well, despite some of them being virtually unchanged since the ride opened. Even when you can tell how an effect is done, you can't help but marvel at the ingenuity and brilliance of the Imagineers responsible. And of course, the ride features the legendary voices of Paul Frees and Thurl Ravenscroft, which only reinforces my desire to see a boxing match between Toucan Sam and Tony the Tiger. While Boris Badenoff sings You're a Mean One, Mr. Grinch. After that chilling dip into the macabre, we move on to the section you may remember best from your childhood, Fantasyland. I will say this about the Magic Kingdom's Fantasyland. The castle motif makes a little more sense than Disneyland's Bavarian village motif, but at the same time, something about it feels a little less genuine. Still, the important things here are the rides, which are all kid-friendly. Well, some of them may be emotionally scarring, but there's no sudden drops. And it's nice to see Buddy Hackett finally get the snack bar he so richly deserves. Magic Kingdom's Fantasyland shares a couple rides with Disneyland, most prominently the Carousel and the Dumbo ride. Others include Winnie the Pooh, the Mad Tea Party, Snow White's Scary Adventures, Peter Pan's Flight, and of course, It's a Small World.
You will never find the more wretched hive of scum and villainy.
Oddly enough, the Magic Kingdom's version of Small World just blends in with the rest of the rides. If you weren't careful, you might accidentally walk in thinking you were riding something that wouldn't make you want to club an otter. Not like the Disneyland version, which looms ominously in the back of the park, warning everybody with that dreadful tick-tocking, almost as if to say, "Abandon all hope, ye who enter. Here there be earworms." I have to talk about Peter Pan's Flight for a minute because the Disneyland version was probably my first ever theme park ride, aside from some little things at Knott's Berry Farm. Peter Pan was my brother's favorite movie when we were little, so naturally when we first went to Disneyland, we had to ride Peter Pan's Flight as many times as we could. And every time we've been to Disneyland since, I had to ride it at least once just for nostalgia. I've done that ride so many times I have it completely memorized, and each time I ride it, I'm 6 years old again. As opposed to when I get off and I just act like I'm 6 years old. Now, the Magic Kingdom version...
Alright, that's it!
Mickey? What are you doing here?
I've had it with your whining. It's all California's better this and California's better that. Both parks can't be exactly the same, you know?
Well, I'm sorry, but I grew up with Disneyland, you know? It was this awesome place we only got to visit once every few years, and as a kid, it was really the pinnacle of...
Suck it, Gansel! Just find something about the park to enjoy, you whiny son of a bitch!
Okay. Look, I was just going to say, the Magic Kingdom version is different. Some parts are bigger, some parts are smaller, some in different orders, but it's not really better or worse, it's just different. And while I personally prefer Disneyland for sentimental reasons, unlike with Pirates, there's really no concrete arguments to be made for one Peter Pan version being better or worse than the other. It's all just personal preference. But as long as we're talking about differences, I should take a moment to address the following rides present in Disneyland's Fantasyland, but not Disney World's. Disney World does not have the Matterhorn bobsleds, the Storybook Land Canal Boat, the Casey Jr. Circus Train, the Alice in Wonderland ride, Pinocchio's Daring Journey, or Mr. Toad's Wild Ride. It used to have the latter, but that got replaced by Winnie the Pooh. In Disneyland, Winnie the Pooh replaced Country Bear Jamboree, which was probably Christopher Walken's doing.
Oh no! Country Bear Hall has been crushed! This is not awesome!
Still, I could be wrong, but I don't think people miss the Country Bears in California nearly as much as they miss Mr. Toad here. I mean, how many children's rides end with eternal damnation? One thing Magic Kingdom has that Disneyland doesn't is PhilharMagic, a fun 3D show featuring Donald Duck interrupting several famous Disney musical numbers. If that sounds appealing to you, and it should, then you'll enjoy the show. And naturally, if you're towing kids, you'll spend quite a lot of time in Fantasyland, and probably a fair bit of time in Mickey's Toontown Fair. Okay, wait, hang on just 1 second. It was established in Roger Rabbit that Toontown is located near Hollywood, separated only by the Acme factory and the tunnel from Back to the Future Part 2. Hence, it makes sense that Disneyland in California has a Toontown. So why does Orlando have a Toontown Fair?
Riddle me this, Batman!
There's something about a summer home conceit, which I guess makes some amount of sense, but really, Toontown's fair is on the opposite coast of Toontown itself. I mean, sure, cartoon characters can travel using physics-bending methods, which probably helps them to deal with the distance, but really, the Toontown community definitely could have planned this out a little better. Anyway, both Toontown Fair and Toontown California have the requisite Mickey and Minnie houses and a family roller coaster. Orlando's coaster is themed after Goofy's biplane, while California's is a coaster designed by Gadget from the Rescue Rangers. It's just a family roller coaster either way, so the theme doesn't make much of a difference, but the Disneyland version is the only surviving attraction based on a Disney afternoon show. And that's pretty cool. There really should be a Darkwing Duck ride.
Let's get dangerous.
Toontown California is a lot bigger than Toontown Fair.
Oh boy, here we go.
Unlike Orlando, California has the Roger Rabbit ride and some other props and items throughout the area to add to the cartoony atmosphere. But really, neither Toontown goes as far as they could with this concept. Yeah, I know it's ridiculous to ask that I actually feel like I'm inside a cartoon in these areas, but the fact is they don't really look cartoony, they just look fake. I probably shouldn't be picky because these areas really are aimed at the younger crowd, but as a grown man who is still a big fan of animation, I would like an area that did better justice to the cartoon world. Anyway, after that disappointing peek into cartoon geekery, we move on to sci-fi geekery with Tomorrowland!
Welcome to the world of tomorrow!
Why do you always have to say it that way?
Haven't you ever heard of a little thing called showmanship? Come, your destiny awaits!
First off, there's the Monsters, Inc. Laugh Floor, which I haven't done yet, and the Stitch Great Escape, which I haven't done yet, and which was a kid-safe replacement of the reportedly much scarier Alien Encounter, which I've never done. Okay, I'll fess up. The only Tomorrowland rides I've done in Orlando are Space Mountain and Buzz Lightyear. The Buzz Lightyear ride is a fun, if simple, shooter. It's not quite sure if it wants to be based on Toy Story or the spin-off animated series, so we get cartoony images mixed with scale gags. The ride itself doesn't have many interesting animatronics, mostly just having flat cutouts of enemies you can shoot at, but the Buzz animatronics are cool and cleverly use a projection screen instead of an animatronic face. The effect isn't perfect, as the lighting on the face is weird, but it allows him to be a lot more expressive than he would be otherwise. The ride is pretty fun. I wouldn't wait in a very long line, but there are a few nice shoutouts for the three of us who actually watched the cartoon show. And of course, there's Space Mountain. While I generally enjoy theme rides and story rides more than roller coasters, Space Mountain is just awesome. It has enough of a theme in the line to satisfy me, and it's just a cool coaster. Now, at one point, the Disneyland version added a pretty sweet soundtrack by a composer whose name I never learned how to pronounce, but whose work you're probably familiar with. That soundtrack is missing from the Orlando version, but that's a pretty minor complaint, and either way, Space Mountain is a fantastic experience. Little pro tip, the picture is actually taken at the beginning of this ride, not during a drop, so if you want to pose, do so early. By this point, you're exhausted, but you spent so much on your ticket that you can't leave now, you need to spend the whole day here. So you're pretty much obligated to stick around for the night entertainment, which of course includes an electrical parade and the Wishes fireworks show.
All right, we're trying to save our spots for the fireworks show here. It's a feat of nightmarish proportions. Tell them a little about it, Lucky.
There's too many people here.
That's the short version.
There's too many of them.
More importantly, there's too many of those double-wide baby strollers that really honk up traffic. We're pretty sure our friends aren't going to get back to us before the fireworks begin.
And in the highway, freeway, you know?
And we just heard this whole diatribe from Jiminy Cricket about how this is supposed to be shared with friends. Well, it's really hard to do that. It's really hard to do that with all these strangers around. Thanks. You're a stranger, huh? No, you're one of the friends, but
Okay.
I don't know half these people. There's got to be at least 12 people here I don't know. I mean...
Now, the fireworks are always cool, and the medley of well-known Disney songs is fun, but the new music composed for the show is just kind of there. Actually, where have I heard that melody before?
Sonic, he can really move. Sonic, he's got an attitude. Sonic, he's the fastest thing alive. He's the fastest thing alive. He's the fastest thing alive.
Well, that's Magic Kingdom in a nutshell. A 20-minute nutshell. And honestly, while it has a few things I like better than Disneyland, overall it doesn't really hold up to its California counterpart. I know some of that is my own nostalgia clouding my judgment, but things like the Shortened Pirates and the missing Fantasyland rides really hurt Disney World's score here. But there's still 3 other major parks to explore, and maybe they'll be more impressive. So join us next time when we visit Epcot.
You're not off the friggin' hook yet, mister. I suppose you're gonna be all pissed off at Epcot for not having everything California Adventure has.
Hey now, that's not fair. I mean, I'm gonna give it a fair shot. If there's something I don't like, I'll address it, but...
Yeah, cram it. I don't want to hear it, you freaking douchebag.
Mickey Mouse just called me a douchebag.
I should have listened when my grandfather said, why don't you major in business instead? Now my hopes have all vanished and my dreams have all died, and I'll probably work forever as a tour guide on the Jungle Cruise ride. Skipper Dan is the name, and I'm doing 34 shows every day, and every time it's the same.
On Dave Does Disney.
Cram it. I don't want to hear it, you freaking douchebag.
Mickey Mouse just called me a douchebag.
And now part 2 of Dave Does Disney. Last time we explored the Magic Kingdom, which it turns out is a slightly inferior clone of the original Disneyland. While it has its good points, most of the differences from Disneyland aren't exactly improvements. Certainly a fun way to spend a day, but not as fun as the classic.
So now we move on to what is reportedly Disney Orlando's biggest advantage over Disney California, Epcot.
If Magic Kingdom is the heart of Walt Disney World, then Epcot is probably the thorax. But if Magic Kingdom is the face, then Epcot is the heart. Epcot stands for Experimental Prototype Community of Tomorrow, and it was one of Walt Disney's final major dreams before his death. It's the entire reason Walt Disney World exists. Originally, Walt didn't want Disney World to be a theme park at all, but a utopian city, where people would actually live and new technologies in city design and convenient living could be tested out. The only reason Walt reluctantly agreed to build the Magic Kingdom is because the board of directors didn't think the idea would fly without an East Coast Disneyland to draw tourists. Walt's ideas were insanely ambitious, even for today, and even though they were all for the greater good, some of them were actually a little scary. Citizens of Epcot wouldn't own their homes, so Disney would have the right to make any upgrades and changes that they saw fit. Yes, the city would have been built specifically to test new technologies, but still slightly creepy prospect. After his death, the company realized, wait a minute, we can't run a city, we're too busy modernizing Robinson Crusoe. That'll be our real legacy. So plans for Epcot were scaled way back, and it turned into Epcot Center, another theme park, but with a more educational bent. Years later, the Disney company would open Celebration, a planned community where people live, so it sort of carries on the original Epcot idea on a much smaller scale. The same way Stars Hollow carries on the Gotham City idea. But Epcot is a theme park now, which means that I actually care about it. And even just looking at the map, you can see it's a different experience than the earlier Disney parks. While Disneyland and Magic Kingdom are both designed as a circle, with all the lands gathered around a central point and everything within easy access, Epcot is actually designed as more of a figure eight with 2 major individual sections: Future World,
Future Wax,
and World Showcase. These 2 areas are meant to embody the 2 sides of the original Epcot dream: innovation for living in the future while appreciating diversity and cultural heritage, uniting the world.
We'll begin here with Future World, the world's first theme park based on a Jonathan Colton song.
The general theme of Future World is, shockingly enough, the future.
I can tell you about the future.
Attractions such as Innoventions are meant to show us the latest cutting-edge technology. There's all sorts of educational exhibits. Yeah, just get to the rides already. The most iconic image associated with Epcot is Spaceship Earth, or as you probably know it, the giant golf ball of doom. The original version of this ride was actually written by Ray Bradbury.
I'm aware of his work.
And I understand this ride has gone through various permutations and renovations over the years, but all I can really tell you about is the current version, which features Judi Dench teaching us about the history of communication between animatronic cultures. And she probably got an Oscar nomination for her narration here. There's also a video screen that theorizes about your future based on the unflattering photo they take at the beginning of the ride and some data they ask regarding your interests. Well, why does the Disney Corporation want to know so much about me?
No reason.
After spending some time on Spaceship Earth, you're about ready to leave Earth on another spaceship with Mission Space.
Oh, by the way, your segues really suck.
Hey, shut up. Now, I know the space program may be having budget trouble, but do they really need to resort to recruiting random tourists from Disney World to fly their missions? Maybe they could afford real astronauts if they didn't spend so much money hiring Gary Sinise to run the mission. Oh wait, this is the space program from the future! A planet where scientists evolved from actors? Okay, Mission Space is actually pretty awesome. It's a centrifuge motion simulator that gives you the feeling of flying your own mission to Mars. It can be an intense experience, which is why they give you two options. You take the green card, and you go on the easy mission. You go on a simple ride, and believe what you want to believe. You take the orange card, and you go on the hard mission. And I show you how deep the motion sickness goes.
As you can see, astronaut flight training isn't like anything you've ever experienced before. It is intense.
But if getting nauseous in space is too much for you, there are plenty of chances to get nauseous without leaving the atmosphere, such as Test Track. Test Track is a pretty neat ride that lets you fulfill your childhood dream of being a crash test dummy. Oh, nobody else had that dream? Yeah, I didn't either. Nope. After waiting in line and seeing our fellow dummies get tortured, we hop into a car which is being tested by a team led by John Michael Higgins.
I shall have a birthday cake.
In every actor, there lives a tiger, a pig, an ass, and a nightingale. You never know which one's going to show up.
I shall duck behind that little garbage car.
And, much like Higgins' very diverse list of roles,
Guy's a pro.
What makes Test Track cool is the variety of thrill ride experiences it gives you. From slamming on the brakes to setting you on fire, Test Track does not settle for being just an ordinary roller coaster. After ensuring that we'll never want to drive a car again, we decide to kick back and relax by the seas. This is where Future World starts to become a bit of a misnomer. A more accurate description might be Science World or Environment World, but I guess Future World sounds more hip. I guess some of the things here educate children on how to make a better future, but still, it's about as accurate a name as music television. Anyway, the seas! First off is the Nemo and Friends ride. Now at Disneyland, the old submarine ride in Tomorrowland got a Finding Nemo overhaul a few years back, using a combination of animatronics and animation projected onto glass. The Nemo ride here is basically the same as that, except without the coolness of being in a submarine. Instead, you're in a clam-shaped people mover with the animatronics right in front of your face. One advantage it has over the Disneyland submarine version is at the end the characters are projected into an actual aquarium. Not gonna lie, it's pretty cool to see the Nemo character surrounded by real fish. Although it's kinda ruined by the inane sing-along. After the ride, you find a large educational center, including aquariums, scuba demonstrations, feedings, playgrounds, and Turtle Talk with Crush. Turtle Talk is a fun concept. There's a screen with a computer display of Crush, who is being controlled and voiced by an unseen cast member.
Oh! Pay no attention to that man behind the curtain!
The real-time control over the animated character allows him to interact with the audience, especially the kids sitting near the front. Now, obviously, this isn't the first or only place that this sort of live control of an animated character has been done, but it's still a wonderful setting for it. The blending of the lines between animation and live performance brings the character to life in a way that pre-programmed animatronics or costumes with static facial expressions can't. And I think it's the sort of creative experiment in storytelling and character portrayal that Disney should be all about. So, after spending some time under the sea, if you're ready to come up for air, you can crawl onto the land. If it's raining, you'll probably spend quite a bit of time in the land because it's all indoors. It centers around a food court featuring all natural foods, plus on the second floor there's a rotating sit-down restaurant. The land contains 3 main attractions. First is an educational short film featuring Simba, Timon, and Pumbaa called The Circle of Life, an environmental fable. So, Nathan Lane, Ernie Sabella, and a Matthew Broderick impersonator teaching kids about pollution? Sounds like a recipe for subtlety.
Let's make it yours!
Check, please.
Then there's Living with the Land, a boat ride that first passes through some typical Disney ride displays about the history of farming, but then takes you on a tour through Disney's actual greenhouses, where you can occasionally see farmers at work growing the stuff you're getting in the food court. There are also labs where new farming technologies are being developed, so I guess they touch on that whole future thing a little bit. Finally, there's Soarin', a ride which originally opened at Disney's California Adventure under the name Soarin' Over California. It's the same exact ride, but I guess they shortened the title to Soarin' here because people don't like to be reminded that there is a California with a theme park that costs less and offers more than Magic Kingdom. Gansel, you're trying my patience! Fine, I'm sorry. Would you feel better if I badmouthed California for a while?
Not really. I'd prefer it if you didn't complain at all.
Well, here we go. I've only been to California Adventure once, and it was in the first year of its existence. I hear it's improved since then, with the focus on adding more Pixar characters and things like that, but in the year I visited, it was weak. It had maybe 3 good rides, one of which was a generic rapid river ride that you could find at any amusement park. The main good ride was Soarin' Over California. You know how when you were a kid, the only place to see an IMAX movie was at the museum, and they were always about the evolution of scuba technology or something like that? Well, Disney decided that a huge screen that envelops your entire range of vision wasn't gimmicky enough for an educational film, so they added a ride element, where you're suspended in fake glider-type seats in front of the screen that tilt, turn, and spray various smells at you. Although, as I recall, in its opening year, the aroma technology had not yet been perfected, and we were usually just treated to one strong smell lingering throughout the whole ride, usually either pine or oranges. The ride was integral to California Adventure because, well, what else were you going to do? But here in Epcot, you have more options for rides. And yet this one is still extremely popular, running out of fast passes very early in the day and having an interminably long line. Still, it's a good ride. It's worth doing at least once. And I've always said that I listened to Patrick Warburton if he read the phone book, so I'll take giving the pre-flight safety instructions.
Nice work, pal.
If the rain stops long enough to let us leave the land, we can move on to the Imagination Center, where Eric Idle had to find something to do between Meaning of Life and Spamalot.
Oh, you're no fun anymore.
So he decided to reward the efforts of all the world's greatest imaginary scientists. Like this guy, who invented Flubber. Only 36 years after Fred McMurray already invented it. Until recently, the Imagination Center was the home of the 3D show Honey, I Shrunk the Audience. It was fun enough. I guess if you're a die-hard fan of the Honey, I Shrunk the Kids franchise, you would love it. But otherwise, it's just a standard 3D show that makes me sad Rick Moranis is retired. Since my last visit, this is apparently no longer playing at this theater, because now that it's okay to like Michael Jackson again, Disney insisted on the return of Captain EO, possibly one of the greatest collaborations of Jackson, George Lucas, and Francis Ford Coppola ever to involve robots. Then there's Journey into Imagination, where Idle teaches you about the 5 senses, and gets annoyed by a purple CGI dragon named Figment.
Yeah, I know all about the senses.
But mostly he just gets annoyed by Figment.
I don't want you out of my sight.
Out of sight? Okay, come on everybody, here we go! It's not about listening with your ears, it's about listening with your imagination. With F-I-G-M-E-N-T, you can see things differently.
Over and over and over and over and over and over and yeah, why couldn't this have been a shooter ride? It's enough to make you want to leave Future World and never come back.
So now we move on to the World Showcase, where we can experience firsthand just how ignorant I am of other cultures.
But this is America, where we unapologetically bastardize other countries' cultures in a gross quest for moral and military supremacy.
I forgot. Bring on the imperialistic condiments.
What Future World attempts to do with science, nature, and technology, World Showcase attempts to do with international culture, by giving us a tour of the nations of the world. All 12 of them. Boy, that would have made Yakko's World a lot easier to memorize.
United States, Canada, Mexico, Norway, and Germany now one piece. Italy, Morocco, France, England, China, Japan.
Each pavilion of World Showcase features a fast food restaurant, a fancier sit-down restaurant, a couple of gift or specialty shops, and usually one major piece of entertainment, such as a ride, film, or live show. There are also street performers, characters from the country in question, and some more treats. They're basically very tiny museums of very abridged national history. The country in 5 seconds, if you will. The best thing about each area is that the employees are all people, generally students, from these different nations. They're paid to be friendly, so they will humor you as you ask a bunch of questions about their homeland. Just, don't be a total douche, you know?
Tell me, is your marriage the kind of thing where when you die, she has to throw herself on a fire? No? Okay. it's still very cool.
Going clockwise, we start out with Mexico. Much like the land, this is your stop on a rainy day because Mexico is located inside a giant pyramid. After passing by some art displays, you find yourself in a town square at nighttime. As always, the atmospheric Disney magic is in full effect here, and despite its small size, the village feels fully alive. In the back is the Grand Fiesta ride, featuring the cast of the Three Caballeros. Even though Jose Carioca is Brazilian, but hey. This is a boat ride that starts off taking you past the dining area for the fancy restaurant, which is good because it's not like Orlando's version of Pirates of the Caribbean had the decency to do that. And the ride continues to trigger your pirate-related nostalgia by taking you past the Blood Island volcano.
You fool! You've given cheese to a lactose-intolerant volcano god!
Although I guess if I'm gonna make a LucasArts reference here, it probably should be Grim Fandango. The ride follows Jose and Panchito as they try and locate Donald for the big Three Caballeros reunion concert. It's a simple plot, but it makes me realize how awesome a Blues Brothers ride would be.
They broke my watch!
Anyway, the animatronics here are It's a Small World level, with most of the action taking place on video screens, mixing the cartoon characters with live-action footage. And also like It's a Small World, you will never get the song out of your head. But there are some amusing visual gags, and if you have any nostalgia at all for the Three Caballeros movie, you're almost guaranteed to get at least some enjoyment from the ride. And hey, at least we're not trying to chase this guy. Because we failed geography, we learned that right next to Mexico is Norway.
Which I guess would make this Norwegian wood. Isn't it good?
Norway features World Showcase's other boat ride, Maelstrom. This one doesn't tie in with any established Disney franchise, since apparently they couldn't even think of a Norwegian Disney character for their topiary, but it's still fun. While still not quite a thrill ride, Maelstrom is a tiny bit less relaxed than Grand Fiesta. It's got some mild drops, some backwards parts, trolls. It's not very long, but it's good fun. At the end of the ride is a film on Norwegian culture, but if you're desperate to get through here without actually learning anything, you can quickly exit through the theater with the people who just watched the film. Next, we move on to China. And even though it's China and not Japan, they were still nice enough to include a tribute to everyone's least favorite Yu-Gi-Oh character.
Hey Taya, what do you think of...
Friendship is the best thing ever, don't you agree? Damn it!
Sure, why not?
China has a larger outdoor section than the previous two nations, with some really lovely gardens that I could spend hours walking around in. Until I remember how much I paid to get in here and realize that I need to be entertained and fast. So there's the shops, some nice museum areas, and the first of several Circle Vision shows. What's Circle Vision? I'm glad you asked! In Disney's ongoing quest to outgimmick IMAX, these educational films give you smaller screens that wrap around the room so that you can see something in every direction. It's actually a pretty neat idea since it allows for cool flyovers of these nations' countrysides, and at its best, it's like a great panoramic image in motion. The problem is, it doesn't always work. I'm not sure exactly how these are made, but I presume that there's some sort of device with several cameras mounted on it pointing out in a circle, and the camera operator moves this device around to get the shots. The problem is, sometimes it doesn't seem like each camera is secured quite as tightly as it should be. Or they're not all spaced out exactly as they should be, or things like that. The result is tiny shakes and movements in each camera's image that are just slightly out of sync with each other. When you add in that each film projector has a slight margin of error for image position or shake, the effect can sometimes be something like this. Okay, so it's rarely that bad, but it can be distracting. But if that sort of thing doesn't bother you, Circle Vision films can be a really fun way to see another country without ever having to leave the comfort of Orlando. Next, we pass through Africa, which is a bridge. That's all Africa gets, is a bridge. And it's not even always an accessible bridge. Sometimes it's up because they have to float out the props for the fireworks show. Animal Kingdom will pay a little more attention to this continent, but for now, enjoy bongo drums and maybe a guy whittling. Ooh, and an ice cream stand. Then we move on to Germany. Not only is it the land that launched 1,000 Faulty Towers quotes.
Or would you like a drink before the war? Meaning that trespassers will be tied up with piano wire. Sorry. Hors d'oeuvres, which must be obeyed at all times without question. Sorry. Don't mention the war. I mentioned it once, but I think I got away with it all right.
Will you stop talking about the war?
Me? You started it?
We did not start it.
Yes, you did. You invaded Poland.
But it's also the home of that most Aryan of princesses, Leafy Green and the Seven Shrubs. Why, and there's Princess Healthy Tan herself. Germany doesn't really have any show or ride, but it does have a Christmas shop, and it has trains. After so many rides that you must be this tall to enjoy, it's nice of them to offer something to the microscopic people. The rest of us can't ride the trains, but we can certainly watch them.
Mr. Sopwith, aren't you in fact a train spotter? What? Don't you in fact spot trains?
Man, what is it about Germany that brings out my inner John Cleese fanboy?
And over here is Mr. Hilter.
Good afternoon.
Next up is Italy, which also doesn't have a show or a ride, but it has a very fancy looking courtyard. And it has... Okay guys, seriously? Lady and the Tramp aren't from Italy. They ate Italian food in one scene in the movie, but you notice how all the humans other than Tony and Joe speak with an American accent? Okay, I guess that's not always indicative, but they're still not from Italy. Just because they invented the spaghetti kiss does not qualify them to be Italy's topiary. After that horrible display of a lack of research, we move on to the country that Epcot seems proudest of.
Ah, just like we left it, with the USA in charge!
Yes. And like every other country represented here, they present what we're best known for, fried stuff.
Okay, I'm not going to read too much into the fact that the US Pavilion is bigger than all the others. After all, they portrayed our nation just as accurately as all the others. We all know how our national economy and culture is based exclusively on colonial inns. That's why Bob Newhart is the richest man in the country. The United States features two pieces of entertainment. The first is a show called The American Adventure, a combination of animatronics and film clips featuring great moments in American history, ending with a montage of several influential Americans. Once again, I'm not going to read anything into the fact that they linger on Walt's image longer than anyone else's. Right across the way from that, they have a big concert stage where they often have weekend concerts by various famous people, like Danny Bonaducci's TV brother. Compared to the other countries, the US section has more of a focus on entertainment, but it's light on the shopping. I guess they figure that you can buy American stuff anywhere around here, but it's still odd that all we get is this tiny little shop. But at least you can buy stuff themed after your favorite American athletes, like that British guy. Next we move on to Japan, which has even more gardens than China. It's very relaxing. So lovely and peaceful and... Okay, gotta focus. Once again, not much entertainment, but a lovely setting, and the Japan gift shop will probably be of interest to all my fellow geeks. But what am I talking about? Most of us own this stuff already. We then move on to Morocco.
I confess all my knowledge of Morocco comes from Casablanca, so I fully expect to run into Claude Rains while I'm here.
This is another small one, without much in the way of entertainment other than street performers, but I do like the atmosphere. I like to pretend I'm on the Village of the Crown from King's Quest VI.
Old lamps for new. Old lamps for new.
And then there's France. And wow, there are a lot of Disney characters from France. You couldn't have lent one to Norway or Italy. There's also a lot of food in France, plus another Circle Vision show, although this one's only half the number of screens, so I guess it's a semi-Circle Vision show. I feel kind of ripped off though. I spent hours hanging out in France, and not once did I get stalked by a cute, quirky brunette. Although I didn't get stalked by a species-blind skunk either, so I guess it evens out. After that, we cross a bridge featuring Sleeping Beauty, Cinderella, and their princes, because I guess nobody could agree on which country they belong in, but they had to be near each other so they could argue about whose castle was better. We also passed the secret back entrance to Epcot, which I'll get back to when we talk about the resorts. Then the next stop on our tour is England.
England, England, England.
Yes, it's a country this company has a fine history with, going all the way back to Dick Van Dyke's accent in Mary Poppins.
Ah, but I kid, my all-time favorite Disney movie. Okay, so technically this land is dedicated to the entire United Kingdom, but England seems to get the main focus. Of course, there's a tea shop, which most of my friends would enjoy because so many of them are addicted to tea. Although personally, I prefer my caffeine cold and carbonated. But on the other hand, holy crap, they have hobnobs. Hobnobs are one of my favorite snacks ever. I love hobnobs. I'm so excited. Hobnobs. Although, sorry, fellow Spaced fans, but last time I checked, they do not have Jaffa cakes. There's also a toy store, a sporting goods store. Once again, not a whole lot of entertainment, which is kind of odd. You would think the land that brought us Monty Python, Fawlty Towers, P.G. Wodehouse, J.R.R. Tolkien, Douglas Adams, Neil Gaiman, Stephen Fry, Hugh Laurie, Rowan Atkinson, Kenneth Branagh, Michael Caine, Space, Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, The Office, Extras, Coupling, Red Dwarf, frickin' William Shakespeare, and the good version of Death at a Funeral would know how to keep us entertained. But it's not completely lacking. There are some street performers, and there's a cover band of a little-known quartet named after a misspelled insect who are apparently kind of popular over there. Finally, we conclude our tour of the planet with the land of poutine and honey, Canada.
It's more than just Robin Sparkles videos, Dudley Do-Right cartoons, and dudes named Rousdower. It's also Martin Short movies.
Yes, Ed Grimley himself hosts this Circle Vision look at our neighbors to the north, a land of waterfalls and buildings that don't seem to have much purpose. Seriously, Epcot, some of these pavilions have so much cool stuff. Why are the others so half-assed? And hey, I didn't know Bambi was Canadian. Or is he? Why should I trust them if they claim Lady and the Tramp are Italian? I don't know if I can trust Epcot or Canada.
They're not even a real country anyway.
At night, World Showcase has its own fireworks show, Illuminations. I hear it's fantastic, but I haven't had a chance to see it myself yet. Which, according to the internet, makes me fully qualified to judge it. Nah, it's okay. Does Epcot hold up to Walt Disney's vision? Certainly not. But I think he still would have liked it, even if he wasn't completely satisfied with it. It's certainly uneven. Not everything in the park is as entertaining as it could be, and much of the educational stuff only begins to look at the very tip of the iceberg. But if it gets people interested in learning more about these subjects on their own, then it's done its job. Like a really overpriced children's museum. There aren't many rides, but Test Track and Mission Space are spectacular enough on their own to warrant a visit. And as rushed as the cultural glances are, you still get to meet people from all over the world, try food from different nations, and so on, which, sadly, for a lot of us is more international cultural experience than we get in a lifetime. Epcot is best known for this blend of education and entertainment, but that's not what separates it from the Magic Kingdom-style parks. No, the thing that separates it from those is booze. Lots and lots and lots of booze. What a lot of these pavilions lack in entertainment, they make up for in libations. There's a reason Future World closes early and World Showcase opens late. They don't want to give people time to get wasted before going on Mission Space. Anyway, join us next time when we move on to Animal Kingdom, where we continue the educational tour and encounter all sorts of wildlife, including the deadliest animal of all.
It turns out it's man.
On our left, there is the Komodo dragon. We don't know what it might be there, but we will look. Crikey! Come here. Crocodile, come closer. I don't see it. Whoa!
So yeah, I have pretty weird friends.
Last time we looked at Epcot, which takes Tomorrowland and It's a Small World and expands them to their own park with less annoying music. It's a park that tries, and to its credit mostly succeeds, at balancing entertainment with education about science and anthropology. It's scant on the rides, but it has a few really great ones. Today we look at Animal Kingdom, which tries to combine the best elements of a theme park with the best elements of a zoo. Although Disney insists that it's not a zoo, going so far as to make up the word not a zoo to describe the park. When Disneyland was first created, it was just one park that had to cover every adventure and fantasy scenario Walt Disney wanted his guests to experience. That may be why you enter the park through Main Street, a portal into an idealized American yesterday. It effectively serves as a transition between the present-day real world using a setting that's familiar enough but still unordinary. However, now that we have enough parks to get their own specific themes, we're no longer leaving our world for a generic mishmash of fantasy, but for a very specific other world. So here, there's no real transition, unless you count the Rainforest Cafe at the border of the park. No, you just enter through a mysterious jungle trail until you arrive at Discovery Island. Where Disneyland and Magic Kingdom have their castles and Epcot has Spaceship Earth, Animal Kingdom's iconic centerpiece is the Tree of Life. Wait a minute, Tree of Life? Where have I heard that before?
This is the promise of the Tree of Life.
Ah! Ah! Not off to a good start. I need some Pixar stat. And fortunately, underneath the tree that shall not be named, there's It's Tough to Be a Bug, a 3D educational short hosted by CGI Dave Foley and terrifying giant animatronic Kevin Spacey. It's short, and frankly, I don't know anyone who claims that A Bug's Life is their favorite Pixar film, but there are worse ways to learn about insect life. Much like the castles in the original parks, the tree is surrounded by the other lands of Animal Kingdom. Going clockwise, we start with Camp Minnie Mickey, which is a kids area, I guess. Okay, I haven't actually checked it out yet. It's not on the way to any of the other areas, you have to cross a bridge to get to it, and I had no reason to go that way. So let's move on to Africa, which gets more than just a bridge this time. In fact, it gets a whole freaking safari. The Kilimanjaro Safari is probably the closest you can get to an actual safari experience without leaving the US. You're in a very bumpy tram, hence my even crappier than usual footage, seeing a bunch of actual animals live and up close, depending on how close they feel like getting to the tram. This basically fulfills Walt Disney's original vision for the Jungle Cruise. The odd thing is, even though we're surrounded by real animals in a real facsimile of their real natural habitats, Disney still insists on adding some fakeness. There's a subplot about poachers being on the loose and catching a baby elephant, but then the poachers get caught off stage and the elephant is recovered. This subplot happens entirely on the radio, and all we actually see of it is an animatronic elephant in the back of a truck. It's the only animatronic in the whole ride, and the subplot adds absolutely nothing to the experience, other than immense confusion as you wonder why they even bothered to include it. Fortunately, it doesn't completely undermine the experience. If you don't want any fakeness at all, Africa also has the Pangani Forest Exploration Trail, which, no matter what Disney tries to tell you, is essentially a zoo exhibit.
It's not a zoo!
But hey, zoos are fun. And I have it on good authority that it's all happening at the zoo. But I'm also told zebras are reactionary, and I don't know what I'm supposed to do with that information. Then you can take a train to Rafiki's Planet Watch, which I haven't bothered to do yet. Okay, I've only been to Animal Kingdom twice, and I haven't had time to do everything, and I heard it's like a 7-minute train ride to get there, and it's so far out of the way, and it just hasn't come up. But I'm told there's a petting zoo, so that's cool, I guess. Anyway, let's move on to this continent.
Asia.
Mr. Travolta.
Asia.
Time has run out. The answer was Asia.
Like any continent worth its salt, Asia has monkeys in the middle.
And what are your thoughts on that monkey in the tree?
I think it'd be funny if we got to these trees and started walking around the park.
If you want to see a wider variety of Asian animals, there's Maharaja Jungle Trek, another zoo-ish area, but a bit more themed than Pangani. The idea is that you're from a nearby village and you're visiting the local nature preserve, which was once the Maharaja's hunting grounds. Our first stop is Bat Country. But if you were warned by Raoul Duke that you can't stop there, don't worry, because there's a shortcut past the bats for those not wishing to see bats, which sounds like the name of a Facebook group started by the Joker. But for those who are wishing to see bats, wow, there are bats. There's also an opportunity to get to know the bats who live in your forest. I don't know, we moved in 16 years ago, at this point introducing ourselves will be awkward. They also tell us what we can do to embrace the bats, short of, literally embracing them.
My very own Betty Waddy to love and hug and squeeze into itty bitty pieces.
We can build a bat house, let the bats eat the bugs, though I heard from a reliable source that bats are bugs. And yet this poster says nothing about embracing bats by dressing like them to strike fear into the heart of Gotham's criminal element. I guess that's one of those do-your-own additional research things.
2 Batman references in less than a minute? Pretty lazy, Gansel.
Go away. As mentioned, people who are scared of bats can skip them, and go straight to the man-eating tigers. Yeah, I'll bet you didn't know my Calvin and Hobbes reference was foreshadowing, huh? Whose references are lazy now?
Whatever helps you sleep at night, you 2-bit Seltzerberg knockoff!
How dare you, yeah, there's tigers and there's a whole bunch of other animals and, I'm sorry, I need a second.
Sometimes you wanna go where everybody knows your name.
Finally, there's a section on birds. Huh, I expected something a bit more exotic. Oh, there we go. The trail also lets you skip the bird section. They didn't let you skip the tigers, just the bats and the birds. Nice of them to accommodate people terrified of the concept of flight. And that's the Maharaja Jungle Trek. Hey, remember when Disney parks had rides? Well, our next stop is Kali River Rapids, which is a pretty generic rapid river ride with some subplot about deforestation. It's certainly no Splash Mountain, but it'll hit the spot on a hot day. But if it's a real ride you're after, look no further than Expedition Everest, Legend of the Forbidden Mountain. At first, all I heard about this ride was that it was a roller coaster named after a famous mountain and given a Yeti theme, so naturally I assumed it would just be the equivalent of Disneyland's Matterhorn bobsleds. Turns out that was only partially true. It's actually the Matterhorn bobsleds crossed with Universal's Revenge of the Mummy on a healthy diet of steroids. This is an awesome and fairly intense roller coaster, filled with backwards twists, steep drops, dark tunnels, eerie effects. It's so great that even celebrities want to try it out.
A bunch of paparazzi popping out of nowhere, cameras in your face, and then suddenly.
Walt, tell the camera what your reaction was.
I saw Taylor Swift!
We're the indifferent people over here. So for those curious, apparently when you're a celebrity, you don't have to wait in line like everyone else. You just get to skip right ahead.
Taylor Swift!
Some people were more excited about this than others.
Honestly, I wouldn't have known it was her if everyone else hadn't been freaking out, since I tend not to recognize celebrities younger than Peter Lorre. Still, we were in the single rider only line at the time, which was supposed to be the fastest line, and she gets to go in front just because she's a celebrity? I guess celebrities are just allowed to interrupt anyone they choose at all times, right? At least Rafal's excited.
He's still talking about this.
Taylor Swift.
He has not shut up about this ever since we got off the ride.
I have Taylor Swift particles on me.
He thinks he was at the same seat, in the same seat she was in. I'm not so sure, but...
Good. Taylor Swift!
Can you say a sentence that's not related to that incident?
Taylor Swift.
Apparently not. Rafal, what does this stream remind you of?
Taylor Swift.
I knew it. But really, tell us how you really feel.
Taylor Swift? Talking about Taylor Swift.
Still.
Oh my. He's still happy.
Well, I certainly hope we'll find that much excitement in Dinoland U.S.A. Dinosaur theme parks are always exciting, right?
Oh, Mr. DNA, where did you come from? From your blood.
Dinoland is, of course, the home of Finding Nemo the musical. Yeah, I don't know why Finding Nemo was made into a musical, or why that musical would be in a land dedicated to dinosaurs. This is another attraction that I haven't actually seen yet, but I hear it's better than you would think. Of course, my expectations have been set really low after hearing one of the songs. It's not just me, right? This song is sappy, bland, and out of place in a setting from the movie.
Now eventually you do plan to have dinosaurs on your dinosaur tour, right?
Anyway, for real dinosaur action, look no further than Chester and Hester's Dino-Rama. Wait, did I say real dinosaur action? Sorry, I meant really cheesy and generic carnival rides with pictures of dinosaurs around them. What's with this, Disney? Your rides are supposed to be better than this. They're supposed to give us magical adventures and unique experiences. They're not supposed to be something I could ride at the Big E for an eighth of what the ticket here cost. So far, Dinoland is not living up to its name's potential.
After careful consideration, I've decided not to endorse your park.
Now hold on, there's still one last chance to impress me. What's your last-ditch effort? A ride simply called Dinosaur. Yeah, that's creative. To be fair, it was originally called Countdown to Extinction, but it was rebranded to become a tie-in with that movie that nobody saw. You enter the Dino Institute, and first you wait by museum exhibits about dinosaurs narrated by Bill Nye the Science Guy. Then you watch a video orientation where Dr. Claire Huxtable here talks about sending you back in time to visit some dinos.
That the future is truly in the past.
Huh. And this from a theme park that can't leave a classic alone. Oh ho ho, but then the orientation is interrupted by the young, brash, wacky Dr. That One Guy from the Larry Sanders Show.
Phil, you know, I've got this...
Ulcer?
Party.
Oh.
Okay, yeah, he's on some other show too, but who cares about that? This guy wants to bring a dinosaur back to the present for research. Because, you know, taking a creature out of not only its natural habitat but also its natural century can't possibly go wrong.
Right now, our dino should be about here, at the very end of the Cretaceous period.
No. Right now our dinosaur has been dead for millions of years. During the end of the Cretaceous period, he was at the end of the Cretaceous period. Time and space are different things.
You're just not thinking fourth dimensionally.
Right, I have a real problem with that.
If we can find him at this point in time, we can probably find him at an earlier point in time as well. So why do you need to take us to this particular point in time?
That is impossibly close to the giant asteroid impact that destroyed most life forms on Earth.
Oh, right, because the plot demands a ticking clock.
Flash photography? I wouldn't.
No, but you'd endanger tourist lives just because you wouldn't bother to find out where the dinosaur was an hour earlier. After wondering why these clowns don't get their funding pulled, you board your time rovers and the ride begins. I would say it's Disneyland's Indiana Jones ride crossed with Universal's Jurassic Park River ride. But no, it's just the Indiana Jones ride with dinosaurs. Same cars, same basic layout, same effects. The only difference is that it has dinosaurs and it's pitch black. And while it's not a bad ride, certainly the best Dinoland has to offer, it still doesn't reach the perfection of its Indiana Jones counterpart because you can't see a damn thing. The Indiana Jones ride is great for many reasons, but one of the biggest is, of course, the atmosphere. You really feel like you've been pulled into an adventure from one of the movies as you see the temple around you. Seeing a couple of dinosaurs is cool, and there are some great moments like the dinosaur that follows your car, but there's not nearly the same scale here. Still, it is the second best ride in Animal Kingdom right after Everest, but that's not saying much considering the number and quality of rides in the park. But then Animal Kingdom isn't focused on rides. The rides almost seem like something they put in as an afterthought out of obligation. The focus is on seeing animals, and you can do that a lot. Still, there are lots of places you can see animals for much cheaper that are probably closer to your home. Is it really worth coming to Animal Kingdom just for Everest Dinosaur and a fake safari? Well, if you have a pass to multiple parks, yeah, Animal Kingdom is worth checking out if you have the time. But let's be honest, if I could only afford to visit one of the parks, it wouldn't be this one. Still, Everest is awesome, Dinosaur is as close as we get to Indiana Jones, the safari is neat, the animals are cool. I did enjoy the park, I just wouldn't recommend it over the other Disney parks.
So that was Animal Kingdom, including that most dangerous of all animals, celebrities.
Taylor Swift.
And their creepy stalkers.
And there will be a lot more celebrities ahead at Disney's Hollywood Studios.
Zebras are reactionaries, antelopes are missionaries, pigeons plot in secrecy, and hamsters turn on frequently. What the cats you got to come and see at the zoo, at the zoo, at the zoo.
Wow. It seemed like this day would never come. Are you ready for this?
Ready as I'll ever be. I've got my original script still here, and aside from a few updates I have to make to accommodate for some random acts of Lucas, I pretty much can just recreate my original video for this park. I think I'm ready for this park recreation.
Kind of a random reference.
What, Dave made a pointless reference for reference's sake? I'm shocked!
I hate you. Today, we finally look at Disney's Hollywood Studios. Much like Disney's main studio-branded theme park competitor, Universal Studios, Hollywood Studios is dedicated to the entertainment industry. Movies, television, theater, and music all get honored here, and not just from Disney-owned properties. Movies and television owned by Warner Brothers, CBS, and MGM, just to name a few, all get a little bit of love. In fact, you may remember that this park originally opened under the name Disney MGM Studios. Disney had special license from MGM to use the name for the theme park, but MGM wasn't too happy when they found out Disney was using the property as an actual studio, shooting various Disney Channel shows like that Mickey Mouse Club remake that brought these people to the world. So MGM sued Disney, but Disney sued MGM back when MGM wanted to use their name on other theme parks, and long story short, the park is now Disney Hollywood Studios. The theming of the park ranges from the image of classic Hollywood to generic movie backlots to very specific New York or San Francisco backlots.
And according to Wikipedia, parts of Newsies were filmed at the stages here, so just remember when you visit the park, you might not be far from the place where Christian Bale tried to sing.
Where does it say you gotta live and die here? Where does it say a guy can't catch a break?
He's not hideous, but it might be better in the Batman voice.
Santa Fe, are you there? Do you swear you won't forget me?
As you enter the park, you walk down Hollywood Boulevard. Much like Main Street USA's atmosphere of a romanticized old-timey Americana, Hollywood Boulevard projects a romanticized old-timey Hollywood, full of cast members playing all those Hollywood character archetypes.
Oh, hello. I didn't see you standing there. Of course, I'm Dora Menesman, the greatest star in the entire universe, and I just want to say I love all of you little people out there in Hollywood land for loving me. And in closing, I want to say I love you and the man behind that camera. That's you. Now please cut the camera.
The road leads right to a Disney Channel stage, obscuring the giant sorcerer's hat, which is obscuring a building designed after the famous Warner's, Paramount's, Mann's, Grauman's Chinese Theater, which houses the Great Movie Ride. The Great Movie Ride is a slow-moving tram through animatronic recreations of classic cinema scenes from not only Disney, but just about every major studio. With one notable exception. Sure, conflict of interest and all, but the absence is noticeable.
The horror film is my all-time favorite genre. Some of the best horror films were produced back in the 1930s and 40s.
But we choose not to mention any by name. And it has nothing to do with the fact that they were all made by a studio who thinks they're so great with their own theme park and their precious little wizarding world. We'll see who's laughing when we take back Spider-Man from you bastards. If you're a movie buff, it's worth checking out. Classic film scenes and some extra fun when a gangster played by a real human underpaid cast member hijacks your ride. And hey, a scene from Raiders. Sorry Disney, but this does not make up for the lack of the Indiana Jones adventure. One thing you'll notice quickly around Hollywood studios is that there are more shows here than rides. Take the unavoidable advertisements for the American Idol experience, where you too can know what it feels like to have your passions berated and your dreams crushed by a panel of has-beens right before going viral and being ridiculed by the entire internet. If you're very lucky, Paul F. Tompkins might turn you into a running gag. So yeah, it's an audience participation show. I haven't checked it out myself yet, but I imagine they run it so often that they have to cancel much better shows just to make room for it. Let's move on to a show I have seen, the Indiana Jones Epic Stunt Spectacular. The premise here is that we're witnessing the second unit get some stunt pickups for Raiders of the Lost Ark. And all the stunt pickups appear to be long, unbroken takes. This barely resembles any film set I've ever been on, but then it barely resembles any scenes from Raiders I remember. All joking aside, it is a pretty cool stunt show, and once again it has an audience participation element. Some lucky audience members get a chance to be extras in the marketplace scene. There's some fun stunts and some cool slapstick gags, but it still doesn't make up for the lack of the ride. And speaking of rides, and Lucas, let's talk about Star Tours. Now, I rode the original Star Tours in Disneyland long before I ever even saw a Star Wars movie, so I have just as much nostalgia for it as I do for the original trilogy. Yeah, it was kinda slapstick, but it was funnier than most recent attempts at humor in the Star Wars universe. I loved every detail, even in the queue, from the bickering of 3PO and R2 to the silhouette of 2-1B repairing Rex between the flights. Everything about the ride was so delightfully 80s, harkening back to a Star Wars before this, and when enough time had passed to heal the scars from this. In my original cut of the episode, the only thing I really had to say was
the Disneyland version. You're at a spaceport in Tomorrowland and you're about to take a trip to Endor. The Disney World version here, we're clearly already on Endor.
But of course, in the time since I shot that, Disney and Lucas did what they do best. Change things that were already fine. Yes, folks, this is now Star Tours 2, The Adventures Continue, which of course is set long before the events of the original Star Tours because that's what the word continue means. The new version is in 3D with a randomized on-ride film that takes you to a variety of locations from the prequels as well as the original trilogy.
And let me tell you, they replaced my first Star Wars film experience, the ride that went a long way into shaping me into the geek I am today, with this new ride that is actually really, really good.
I'm sorry, I know you want another pirate-style rant, but the new Star Tours is excellent. In fact, I hate to say this because I prefer to be blinded by nostalgia at all costs, but this ride is not only a better Star Wars experience than the original, it's a better ride altogether. The effects are better, the motion is better, the variety of ride experiences is better. Sure, it's not flawless, It doesn't make much sense how each location features the exact technology and the exact condition we saw from that location in the movies, even though we saw them all decades apart in the movies. Unless we're traveling through time, and this ride is also trying to fill the void left by Universal closing Back to the Future. It also doesn't make much sense why Yoda is apparently out of isolation and working with the Rebel Alliance at the same time as Leia and Akbar. And this window that once contained my favorite Easter egg now just contains characters walking around aimlessly, and I'm not really sure what it's supposed to be a window to. A lobby? A lounge? An employee section? Slave quarters? I don't know. But then there was a lot in the original Star Tours that didn't make much sense, like exactly what time frame it took place in that allowed the Death Star to be there, or why 3PO and R2 were working at an airline during said time frame. This version at least justifies that by mentioning Captain Antilles lent them to Star Tours, hinting that their role is part of a spy smuggling operation. And you may be the spy. That's right, audience participation! One passenger is chosen at random to be the Rebel spy. You don't actually have to do anything, they just show your picture and make you feel obligated to buy a t-shirt. But can you imagine being a kid chosen to be the spy? That's why I say this is a better Star Wars experience than the original. While the original just had you near Star Wars events as a witness like the first Pink 5 film, this puts you into the Star Wars events like the later Pink 5 films. You're no longer just innocent bystanders, you're the main characters in the story. And having 3PO as the pilot instead of some random droid kids don't even know yet makes it feel that much more Star Wars-y. And there's still plenty of references to the classic ride, including an appearance in the queue of some defective Rexes whose malfunctions cause him to spout some familiar catchphrases.
This is crack.
But while we don't get any new Paul Rubens dialogue, we do get Patrick Warburton and Allison Janney. And is that John Ratzenberger? I'm seriously asking. The only info I can find on the internet is other people asking the same question. Man, that's obscure fan service that they really put Bren Derlin in the ride.
I really hope you had to look that character's name up.
Yeah, that's right. I looked it up. I did not just know Cliff Clavin's Star Wars name off the top of my head.
I almost feel bad mocking you.
There's a lot of great jokes in the queue, including inside jokes for Star Wars fans and for Disney fans.
Guns, rather annoying. No, just jump up. All of you.
Vehicle ID THX1138. Please return to your craft.
TK41? Why isn't he at his post?
I really like this gag where the oblivious baggage check droid is supposed to stop droid smuggling and, well, doesn't. The attention to detail is spectacular, and the ride contains the very best 3D I've ever seen. Sure, the graphics look more like a video game than a movie, and it's missing the charm of the original scale models, but the depth is incredible. Now, I still miss the original Star Tours. It was a vital part of my childhood, and I kind of hope they roll it back out for a special occasion or two like they did with Captain EO. Come on, with so many ships you could let one of them have the old ride film. But when you take off the nostalgia goggles, this ride is a worthy successor. And when was the last time you said that about a Lucas update?
We hope you enjoyed your flight, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Goodbye!
Okay, we need to move on, but as long as we're on the subject of 3D films with Frank Oz's voice, it's the Muppet Vision 3D, which was actually the last Muppet project Jim Henson directed before his death.
So if any one of you corporate bastards even thinks of updating this for a new generation, I will not be held responsible for my actions.
The film was written by Big Bang Theory co-creator Bill Prady, and the story is not the point. The point is that we have all of our favorite Muppet characters doing classic Muppet gags in 3D! We get to sit in a replica of the Muppet Show Theater. We get an animatronic Statler and Waldorf. The Swedish chef is running the projector, just like in the Muppet movie. Sweetums runs around in the theater. And then there's Waldo. Your mileage may vary on Waldo. Some people find him incredibly annoying, but me, he just makes me sad. Waldo was Jim Henson's experiment with real-time 3D CGI puppetry, and seeing him just reminds me of how many of Henson's ambitious projects and innovations were never fully realized. I would give anything to see what Henson could create with modern special effect technology, and unfortunately that will never come to pass.
You know, guys, when we do a 2-minute piece with Waldo, it takes the computer 120 hours to create the final picture.
Still, overall the film is fun, funny, and filled with that undeniable Muppet spirit that went missing for so long until Jason Segel descended from on high to bring it back. I also have to mention the gift shop, which, despite a disturbing amount of non-Muppet stuff, is full of all sorts of great hidden and inside jokes. Parts of the store are themed after classic Muppet movie sets like the Happiness Hotel from The Great Muppet Caper. The decorations are packed with gags. It's basically everything a Muppet-themed area should be. Well, except for one detail, it's way too small. Originally, Disney MGM Studios was going to have an entire Muppet Land, including a dark ride, but all that came out of it was the 3D show and a costume live show that I've only seen on YouTube, but it wasn't that great. All the other plans fell apart after Henson's death. Okay, you know what? I was sad enough that the world doesn't have Jim Henson before hearing about all this. I don't need even more reasons to know that his loss was history's greatest tragedy. But Henson had said that he wanted the world of the Muppets to go on after he was gone. I realize the original plans fell through, but you own the Muppets now, Disney, and you have acres and acres of undeveloped land. Screw just one section, give the Muppets their own entire park.
They're here.
Forget it, I'm just gonna cheer myself up by focusing on all the fun details again. Hey, wait, shouldn't the nursery set be for Muppets Take Manhattan?
This guy's nitpicking makes us look tame.
And his impressions of our voices make us sound lame. Okay, time for a lunch break. And what restaurant could possibly be more fun than Pizza Planet? What is this? This isn't Pizza Planet. This is nothing but a generic arcade and pizza place in a generic building with the Pizza Planet logo slapped on it. Didn't you even see the movie? That's where I want to go. Look at that place. Holy crap, it's awesome. And here they just pour salt on the wounds by reminding us what Pizza Planet in the movie looked like before giving us this mediocrity. Hell, look at all these crane games, and not a single one of them looks like the one from the movie. They could at least have put the ubiquitous Pizza Planet truck outside, but no. Pizza Planet, you fail. Damn it. Is there a cathartic outlet for uncontrollable rage in the house? Oh, that'll do. Lights, Motors, Action is a stunt show where we're supposedly watching a second unit team film action sequences.
Anyway, tonight on It's the Mind, we examine the phenomenon of deja vu.
But what sets this one apart from Indy is the extended sequence of Cars 2 cross-promotion. Because it's not a show about how awesome stunt drivers are without some cars that you pretend don't have drivers. Aside from that, most of the show is filled with the sorts of stunts you'd expect, with cars, bikes, jet skis, explosions, and all the engine noise your migraine can handle. And of course, there's an audience participation bit. Sort of. At one point, the director asks for a volunteer from the audience who's qualified to drive a very special car.
Find me a kid! Yeah!
And this director went to the Zordon School of Measuring Qualifications. So the kid is controlling the car via remote control. Or is he?
No, it's just Chuck Testa.
See the driver on the side of the car? Yeah, that's who's actually driving the car.
Also, there's no Easter Bunny and your parents are only raising you so they can harvest your organs for the Cyclos. Enjoy the rest of your magical day at Hollywood Studios, kid. Oh, but they give him a special pin, so that makes it all better. Then there's the Streets of America, that famous intersection between New York and San Francisco. Hey, what did you expect? Mexico's next to Norway. No, these are actually supposed to be movie backlot recreations of famous city streets, and the only attraction in the area is the Honey I Shrunk the Kids playground, which is exactly what it says on the tin. I'm a little surprised they haven't given this a Pixar rebranding yet, since half of their movies could easily be applied and all of them are more popular right now than Honey I Shrunk the Kids. But hey, at least fans that are outraged about the 3D show's closure still have this. Really, there are a lot of stages for attractions around here that are just empty. Maybe they'll be getting something cool someday, but for now, this is a pretty dead part of the park. Which is good news for the Backlot Tour, because you walked all the way to the back of the park, you might as well ride something. The Backlot Tour has two main segments. The first is a special effects demonstration in the same vein as the park stunt shows, but instead of Indiana Jones or a generic car chase movie, both of which people might actually care about, this effects show is dedicated to Pearl Harbor. Pearl Harbor.
I miss you more than Michael Bay missed the mark when he made Pearl Harbor.
This whole queue is dedicated to Jerry Bruckheimer and / or Michael Bay's egos. It showcases their films from the enjoyably bad to the accidentally pretty good to the dear God I hate Armageddon with every fiber of my being, no other movie has ever hurt me as much as it has, and this is coming from a guy who wrote jokes for the Batman and Robin riff tracks. Also, what's with the funky squashed aspect ratio? Doesn't anybody here know how to adjust the settings on a widescreen TV? Then they demonstrate some water effects and explosions, and ooh, audience participation, oh look, they got wet. Why is this part of the Backlot Tour? Why not just have a separate special effects show? Was this really the only way they could get people to care about Pearl Harbor? Don't get me wrong, Pearl Harbor's not the only crappy movie they pay homage to, but still, it's such a weird thing to lump in here. Anyway, after that confusion, you walk through a prop warehouse to get to the second segment, the obligatory tram ride. Now, it's impossible to go on this tram tour without thinking of the backlot tour in Universal Studios Hollywood. The main difference is that California's Universal tour is of one of the most famous and important lots in the history of cinema, where countless legendary films were shot and where numerous movies and TV shows are still being shot today. And Florida's Hollywood Studios is pretty much where they shoot commercials for Disney's Hollywood Studios.
We are going to do a little close-up shot, so I'm just doing a quick no Universal shirts.
The only historical thing on the entire tour is the private plane used to scope out the land for Walt Disney World. The tour barely mentions any shows or movies actually being shot there. They show movie props and costumes, but not relevant ones, and when you pass the wardrobe department, they just talk about making the wardrobe for the park's characters. And while the Universal Backlot Tour has several little stops for shows and effects, Hollywood Studios has one, Catastrophe Canyon. It's not bad, but it's not worth the time the rest of the tour takes. Then again, not all of Universal's stops are that worthwhile either.
Look out! It's a shark! Here it comes! The shark is coming!
Man, what is it about the Backlot Tour that brings out my inner Trey Parker and Matt Stone fanboy?
Oh, the line.
Still, if you're in Florida, the Hollywood Studios Backlot Tour has one huge advantage over Universal: proximity. So, there's that. And speaking of proximity, we're almost at Pixar Place, which is sort of modeled to look like Pixar's actual studio, except much tinier. And not really Pixar themed so much as specifically Toy Story themed. The only ride in this tiny stretch of land is Toy Story Midway Mania, which as of this recording is the most popular single ride in any Disney park. The line is never shorter than an hour long, sometimes several hours long, and the fast passes run out very early in the day, so prepare for a long wait. Fortunately, it's mostly an entertaining wait. As always, well, almost always, I am in awe of the atmosphere here. While there's never any question that you're in an ordinary room and not actually shrunken down to toy size, the attention to detail is still impeccable. Several actual toys are enlarged in a realistic and accurate way, and even the decorations made up for the films and the line are filled with great details and jokes, although some are a little outdated. And no surprise, there are plenty of references for the Pixar geeks. There's some awesome childhood nostalgia trigger from actually standing on a giant Candyland board. Although I'm glad the Chutes and Ladders board isn't on the floor because I'd hate to be sent all the way back in line if I landed on the wrong spot. And look, Robot Don Rickles even insults the guests. It's quite okay, wait a second. I know I said the attention to detail was great, but there's always gotta be one stupid thing that bugs me, and here it is. Look at this. That's an accurate replica of eyes from a real-life Mr. Potato Head toy. But unlike the real toys, the potato heads in the movies have separate eyes, and this giant potato head is a replica of the movies. Whose eyes are these? And why do this potato head's eyes keep staring at me? It's a tiny bit creepy the way he's looking at— holy crap, he can remove his own ear! Robot Don Rickles has become self-aware and will lead the machine revolution! I'm simultaneously terrified and excited, because a robot uprising led by Don Rickles is bound to be way more awesome than either of the last two Terminator movies. Seriously, Hockey Puck, you and me, we're f***ing done professionally. Much like Disney World's other Toy Story themed ride, it's a shooter, but instead of moving you slowly through a bunch of flat cutouts with targets, this consists of several shooting mini-games on 3D screens. It's a fun time, and while it's not my favorite ride in the park, I completely understand the popularity. It's a ride that can be equally enjoyed by all ages. There's no major drops so the little kids can ride, but the video game aspect keeps the adults entertained and engaged in a way a ride like Snow White's Scary Adventures might not. Aside from rides and shows, Hollywood Studios also has museum-type areas, such as Walt Disney One Man's Dream, which covers Disney's life as well as a brief history on the company's groundbreaking projects, and even a tiny bit of behind-the-scenes info on what makes the parks work. There's also Magic of Disney Animation, which includes classes, exhibits, meet and greets, and sneak peeks at upcoming animated films. Oh, and just a reminder for how much time has passed since the lost version of this video. Back then, one of the sneak peeks was for this, wait for it, when it was called this. Well, it's hard to find much funny to say about museums, so let's go back to live shows with Voyage of the Little Mermaid. Not to be confused with the upcoming ride, Journey of the Little Mermaid. Yeah, there's a big difference between a voyage and a journey. One of them goes to the bottom of the sea, and the other goes to the center of the earth. The show starts off by raining on you, followed by kinda neat but ultimately pointless laser effects.
Tropical little bit, little bit of
Much like the movie, the best thing about the show is Under the Sea. We all know how high energy the song is, and it's set to some great puppetry. Once that song ends, however, the show really isn't that good. For a live show, it relies really heavily on just showing us scenes from the film. No disrespect to the cast members, as I'm sure every one of them gives it their all day in and day out, but it's just not very interesting blocking to sing the I Want song sitting on a rock, especially right after such a visually interesting puppet show. She even sings the last line of the song next to the movie's far more iconic pose of the same line. Why even bother having the actress? Things start to look up when there's a pretty cool Ursula puppet animatronic parade float something on stage, but things quickly go south again. Starting from the point where she signs her voice away, most of the story is told in clips from the movie. That's like the bulk of the movie. The entire romantic subplot, the entire action climax, just in clips we've all seen. There's no performance of Kiss the Girl or anything. Hell, the first time a live actor for Eric shows up is when she thinks he's dead. Yeah, there are some emotional stakes for you, killing off a guy we've never actually seen before. And now Puppet Sebastian is interacting with animated Triton, meaning the animated characters are supposed to really be there, so does that mean all those clips from the movie were really going on behind her? Are there two Ariels? And out of nowhere, somebody in a Max costume shows up on stage and they just sort of hug awkwardly in front of a picture of them kissing, and I don't get it. We waited in line for a long time to see a live show. If we wanted clips from the movie, we still have that bulky white plastic clamshell VHS with alleged phallic imagery in our basement somewhere. I don't mind using clips to supplement the live show, but at least have the interesting stuff be live. Figure out a climax that can be acted out on stage. Don't just expect us to be excited by video. At least have the actors actually kiss, for crying out loud. Let's meander back around to Sunset Boulevard for another live performance based on Disney's next animated movie, Beauty and the Beast, located in a small-scale replica of the Hollywood Bowl. Now, Beauty and the Beast is one of my all-time favorite Disney movies, so I'd be a little upset if this sucked. And fortunately, it's a lot better than The Little Mermaid show, but it's still very flawed, mostly because it's way too rushed, so they cut out important parts. And while it's mostly enjoyable, I think the flaws bug me more here because I'm so attached to the source material. You know what, I have a lot to say about this show, and I think it warrants its own bonus video, so stay tuned for that. Alright, we have two more rides to look at here. Let's start with Rock and Roller Coaster, starring...
Aerosmith.
The premise here is that you're taking a tour of G-Force Records, which supposedly has done albums with such rock legends as Queen, The Who, Springsteen, The Kinks, and... Anyway, you happen to be outside a recording booth, and there's Aerosmith. It's really them, standing behind a window that makes them look two-dimensional. And there's their manager, Ileana Douglas.
Are you the Ileana Douglas who works at IKEA, or are you the one who plays the one who works at IKEA?
I'm both! Dude, she's getting naked. That's weird.
She informs them that they're late for a concert. Wow, recording and a concert? It's a busy day to be Aerosmith. Just as they're saying goodbye, Steven Tyler gets a brilliant idea.
Wait a minute. I love that idea. How about some backstage passes?
Wow, I never knew Aerosmith was so nice to random strangers. If I ever see Steven Tyler on the street, I'm totally gonna demand a backstage pass to wherever he's going next. And apparently the parking garage is right outside the recording studio. Sure, why not? Okay, the setup is a bit silly, but Rock and Roller Coaster is a lot of fun. As a kid, I was terrified of roller coasters that go upside down. But after driving in real LA traffic, this is much less scary. Each car plays a different Aerosmith song in a new arrangement recorded specifically for the coaster. So if you don't care for roller coasters or Aerosmith, might as well skip right to a dimension of sound, a dimension of sight, a dimension of a really freaking tall building. Moving into a realm of both effects and physics, of things and ideas, you just crossed the street to the Twilight Zone, Tower of Terror. I confess I haven't seen all that many Twilight Zone episodes, but even I caught a few references to some of the classics, and I'm sure hardcore fans will find even more. Of course, hardcore fans might wonder why a show that specialized in psychological twists and tragic character flaws is lending its name to a thrill ride, but maybe that in itself is the biggest shock in the Twilight Zone. Of course, this is a freefall ride, but it's more than just that. Not only do you bounce up and down in a randomized pattern for a while, but your car is actually being pulled down, so you're falling faster than you would through gravity alone. The combination of archive footage of Rod Serling and voiceover from a far better impersonator than me really sets the mood here. And before the drop portion, there are some great visual effects, including what appears to be a live in-person recreation of the opening credits. The gift shop also contains some Twilight Zone memorabilia. It's nice to see so much attention paid to a franchise that isn't exactly cutting-edge pandering to the youth demographic. I'm looking at you, pirates! At night, there's Fantasmic, and unlike the Disneyland version, which is performed in the rivers of America around Tom Sawyer's Island, this gets its own location. The Hollywood Hills Amphitheater, with its own snack bars and gift kiosks. I admit I've never seen all of the Disneyland version, only bits of it as I was running to get to Indiana Jones while the lines were still short. But the Disney World version is a huge freaking deal, with people lining up sometimes hours in advance to get good seats. And it's understandable because the show is rather epic. But it's also rather silly. So epic and silly, in fact, that it'll take, you guessed it, a whole bonus video to talk about it. Expect that one sometime. You'll forgive me if I'm a little hesitant to commit to video release dates.
So you took forever to release this video, and now you're not even going to cover the whole park?
No, it's just 3 videos for the price of 1, you know? You people are so demanding.
Like Epcot and Animal Kingdom, Hollywood Studios doesn't have as many rides as Magic Kingdom, but unlike those parks, almost every ride is completely awesome. Okay, I'm not exactly rewriting the Great Movie Ride 5 times a day, but it's still neat, and the other rides are even better. I consider the Backlot Tour more of a show than a ride. The shows are a bit more hit and miss, but most of them offer something entertaining. And of course, the Disney Magic atmosphere makes you feel like you're in a different world, even though that world is one as fake as Hollywood. It is a bit odd to have theme park areas pretending to be film sets that are pretending to be cities and spaceports and things like that, but it makes me really excited to visit Christopher Nolan Land someday. Yeah, you want me to compare the park to Universal Studios, but it's really hard to say which one's better than the other. Hell, it's hard enough to compare Universal Studios Orlando with Universal Hollywood. Whether you prefer Hollywood Studios or Universal Studios relies mostly on which movie licenses you prefer. I like both parks a lot, although Universal lost quite a few points for me when they closed the Back to the Future ride.
Jeez, you'll find something to complain about at any theme park.
Why are you still here?
I'm bored. The company barely does anything with me these days. I'm basically a glorified logo.
So now we've covered the 4 major parks of Walt Disney World, but that only makes up like 3% of the land Disney owns. So what's there to do with the rest of it? Well, in the next official episode, and bonus videos about specific attractions don't count as official episodes, we'll talk about some of the other stuff on the property, including transportation, resort hotels, and of course, a whole lot of shopping.
Buffalo Smash makes Warner cash. Means there's gonna be a sequel next year. But Paramount hurts and they're losing their shirts. Means Schwarzenegger's doing King Lear. Oliver Stone does next Home Alone. Means he's getting paid an arm and a leg. The budget goes crunch, but his name packs punch. So they called up the accountants and they're gonna do lunch. While the ratings smile on the OJ trial. Means a movie of the week to premiere. Universal cuts deal with Mr. Spiel. They do 100,000 movies a year. You gotta play it smart if you wanna be part of the crowd that's hip and chic. You're gonna have to learn to talk that variety speak.